You know, my experience was obviously much more centered around what happened with rates, right? And how that picked up the market too, because, like you were saying in your explanation, COVID happened, right? Beginning of 2020. Everybody was super unsure of what was going to happen, how to act, how to go about their daily lives. And eventually they started figuring it out or taking risks, right? To go out and look. Well, I think some of that risk-taking behavior was because interest rates went down so much, right?
Yeah.
And demand went up. But I think part of that demand going up was because since interest rates went down so much, some of the buyers that may not have been at that price point before, now they were, right? Because, before COVID, rates were in the fours, and then COVID hits, and now they're in the low threes and
Yeah.
starting to
So
teeter on.
let's get into that for a second. So just like so people understand how interest rates fluctuate, whatever. And we've been, we get used to kind of what's going on in the current time where we expect two, three, four normal numbers. Like, what's the historical average?
Well, it depends on the time span you look at, right? So if you look at over the last, say, decade, you're talking, right around 4 to 4.5%. That's going to be your baseline average.
Okay.
And in the heat of COVID, I locked in 2.5% interest rates on 30-year fixed rate mortgages with no
So,
points.
By the way.
Yeah.
okay. So what is that? I don't know if you have like a mortgage calculator in front of you or something, but like
Sure.
for people to understand, what difference does that actually make in dollars and cents? Like you mentioned that, demand was high because rates were low, so people could actually afford, people were priced into the market, basically. People could afford. What actually is the difference between, say, take an average rate of 4.5%?
Yep.
Let's take take a $500,000 home.
So let's say we're talking about a $500,000 loan. Okay, make our numbers a little easy for us. And let's say we're looking at a 4.5% interest rate. You're talking about principal and interest, right? Just the loan at $2,533. Okay, so $2,533. Now, like I said before, the heat of the market, COVID, things were down to almost 2.5%.
Comes out to what?
Yeah, so lowering us down to 2.5%, you would lower your monthly payment by $557.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like an
and in the grand scheme, that's only 2%.
Yep. That's only 2% difference in the interest rate, and it makes that big of a difference. Talk about how many more buyers are in that market now.
Instead of paying $2,500 a month, you're spending $2,000 a month.
Yeah. 1975 is what that comes out to. So
and now we might be getting down into the weeds on this, but that ultimately what you're looking at too is debt to income ratios, right?
Yeah.
And so to go from, and when we say that, like we're talking, okay, you make X, right? But you have all these debt services, whatever your payments total up. Well, that percentage, right, can't be around 48%, something like that, right?
It depends on the borrower, right?
Yeah, right.
But you're talking 45, 50% is usually your maximum.
Yeah. And so that $500 is like a whole nother.
It's a completely different ballgame.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Adam, you're talking about about $100,000 of purchasing power that adds to people. Right?
Yeah.
That's huge.
So obviously, so they lower the rates that much. Everyone's just lining up outside your door to lock in a low interest rate so they can, move into a home and just get, and remember, these are 30-year payments. So people in these situations, the rates fluctuate all the time. So everyone's like, this is a chance to lock in a low monthly payment for 30
years of a lifetime.
For my first home or for the rest of my life or for. So your life is going crazy. Everybody's probably just blowing you up to talk about their finances, see what the rates are, lock in rates. Were you doing more purchases or refinances during that time?
Golly, yeah, refinances exploded. And because of it, it made a lot of the banks slow down, especially Adam, Murphy, you experienced this too, appraisals. Golly, did they take a long time at that point, not only because of COVID, right? And the uncertainty of letting a stranger into your home, but because those poor appraisers were so slammed that sometimes it was taking them 2 weeks just to get out to a property.
Yeah, and then we found that the industry adapts, right? Like
Yes.
so we had COVID, so then it was all of a sudden drive-by appraisals became okay. Like they
Right.
never even went inside. They just wanted to make sure the house was there, right?
Right.
And then we started seeing a lot of these appraisal waivers come out because pricing was just so inflated all of a sudden. And to get as the price was always increasing, right? Like you were, by the time you went under contract and had it appraised, it already appreciated.
Yep.
I had
Yep.
deals where, new construction, people bought, and then by the time it was done being built, like the builder was just begging for them to cancel because they could sell it for more. But
Personally experienced that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes,
does
absolutely.
that sound familiar?
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does.
So Ben, on a real simple level, just for people, we take it for granted. We just kind of throw around this language. We're, obviously embedded in it every day. What is an appraisal? What part of the process is that? What impact does it have? What does a buyer out there need to know about an appraisal?
So, in kind of shorthand terms, an appraisal, number one, you have to realize it's done for the bank. It's not done for the consumer, right? The bank is forcing your hand to get a third party out to the property to essentially say, is this worth what you're trying to buy for? Or is it not?
Evaluate it.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing for buyers to really realize about appraisers and appraisal reports when you're buying a property is that this appraiser is not going in there to tell you the exact value of a property. They're really going in there to tell you, is it worth what you're trying to pay for it or not?
Yep.
So even if you think you're getting the best deal, right? The deal of a century on the property.
Probably just going to
most
appraise
likely-
for the contract price.
Absolutely. And I think most people see that as a disappointment, but when in reality, it's completely standard and it means nothing to if you got a great deal or not.
Right. Make your
It's
own
counterintuitive.
evaluation of the property. This is really just kind of a check mark in the
Yes,
process of
it's a
getting an
check mark
approval
for
done.
the lender.
Yeah,
Yeah,
getting a
it's a
loan
check mark for the lender, making sure that the property is worth what you're trying to buy, pay for it. Because what is the lender worried about? They're worried about default and can they sell the property and make their money?
Right. If you default, can they make their money back when they sell it? So they don't want you to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what a buyer should know about appraisers is number one, what we just talked about, right? And number two, I think most buyers, once we start talking about this, they worry, what happens if the appraisal comes in low?
Right.
Right? We've all been there.
Right.
We've been in this industry long enough. We've dealt with low appraisals.
Which was a really big issue during COVID when everybody's paying tens of thousands of dollars over list price.
That's
Yeah.
the reason for appraisal contingency.
The
waiver,
appraiser's
right,
going to the appraiser's probably going to at least look at the list price as a basis for his
They
evaluation.
get the contracts. They get the
Yeah.
contracts.